Hello and welcome to the Creativity Conference's official podcast. My name is Aidan Rhode and today I'm joined by Andi Sweeney Blanco. Andi is an actor, singer, producer, coach, and TV host, originally from Mexico, but joining us now from LA. Andi, it's so great to see you. How are you doing?
Oh, it's so great to be on the podcast for the Creativity Conference. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. It's winter, but it's so nice and sunny outside, but can't complain. So, I've really enjoyed the Creativity Conference the last couple of years. It's been such a powerful, dynamic, collective experience of just meeting really, really interesting people in different fields from around the world. So, I'm just really honored that I get to be involved in that. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, you joined us for the conference in October recently that was
Mhm.
online and delivered some amazing sessions. Did you manage to watch any other sessions during the event? What did you get out of it?
No, I did. I watched a few other sessions the last couple of years because I've tuned into pretty much to a lot of different sessions, and I got the privilege to also do some panels with other amazing creatives. Like Serena Catania being one of them. I'm a big fan of her work. She's just an incredible documentarian and photographer and creative. I mean, she's done so many things. I'll just list all the credits, but she's a real powerhouse. And she also just has a heart of gold and a heart for humanity that is really enriching and empowering. So getting to be on a panel with her was super cool because we just like bounce ideas and build upon them and this kind of open talk setting, which was really, really um, enriching for me as a panelist, but also just uh, as a human. And yeah, and Franziska, an actress from Germany, she and I did a one-on-one talk together as well, and it was really funny because nobody at the conference knew this. We just got paired together, but we actually did a movie together. I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago in Boston. It was shooting in Boston, and I was a supporting, and she was one of the leads, and that's where we met. And we sparked this awesome friendship, and we've been in touch on social media, kind of like over the years. But then when we were placed on this panel, we were like, "Wait, how are you?" It was this like coming together, and it's just such a small world. I mean, she was tuning in from Germany, so it was so incredible to just go, "Whoa, hi, how are you?" So, yeah, just like it's probably one of those things that this organization or this conference came together to bring like-minded souls and people who are supposed to meet together, and we're supposed to meet. And so it's like a confirmation of who's supposed to be in your life.
Yeah, a lot of people came out of it saying like, they found their tribe at last. Like they'd been searching and searching, and they finally found their people that understand them. So
Hmm.
it's always amazing to get that feedback because that's exactly what it's all about, and
Hmm.
just trying to continue to create spaces that celebrate that. So most people potentially who will be tuning into this may know you from your work with the Fixers TV show on BYU
Hmm.
TV, which if you haven't seen, I highly recommend that you do. Can you quickly explain sort of what the show's about and what your role is?
We do build projects for communities around the world. So the Fixers is a build show, and it's unscripted. So it's a documentary of what basically telling the story of each country that we're going to. Each episode's a different country. It's a different mission. It's a different build in itself. We've built like barns, pineapple factories, school buildings, hospital wings, like it just varies per episode what the build itself is. And we do the build all within a week. And it really is 1 week of putting a structure up from the ground up, or sometimes we're taking a structure that exists and totally remodeling and making it and repurposing it for a specific dream or mission based on what the locals there are working towards. So it's basically a show about fulfilling dreams. It's a show about people who have had a vision for themselves and for their community and for the future, that is bettering that that community or that future for everybody in some way. And so we just show up to lend a hand to make that vision advance, and getting to document it along the way. We share their story with the world, and it's I personally being a part of it. It is an incredibly transformative experience because we're not just building a building. We're building relationships. We're building connection. We're building people. We're building ourselves as humans, and humbling as it is to be around people who have such resilience for life, who have such a vision for a future, is incredibly impactful and incredibly powerful. The important bit is that we're not there to go and make this happen for them. Like, the people already made the vision happen. They already have the dream. They already started this entrepreneurial activity, and they just find us, or we find them, and then we come and lend a hand. Like, we're very much working in tandem with them, and that we're learning from them much more sometimes than they're learning from any building expertise that we have. And for me, my main area is the culture, the language, the communities, bridging gaps of understanding, as well as doing some of the carpentry and some of the metal work, and stuff, just working with my hands. And yeah, so that's the premise of the show in a very long nutshell.
Ultimately, it boils down to something that Mike Pell was talking about at the conference in June, which is creativity on demand, right? It's just like super intense. 1 week, let's do as much as we possibly can. How do you personally like prepare yourself for such an intense time frame of like constantly creatively problem solving?
Wow, I actually love that question. I haven't gotten that question in interviews. That's a really good one. Yeah, I mean, I think like everything in life, you prepare as much as you can. I think you can't really prepare yourself for the experience that you're going to be met with. Like, we think we order all of these materials in advance, and we think, okay, we have this layout, this design, and then those materials that they said were going to be available, for some reason there's a monsoon, and then they're not able to get to us, and we have to totally improvise on the spot. Or, and that's a very tactile visual of things that do happen in terms of what you prepare and then what you can't prepare. But sometimes, yeah, I mean, you're not prepared to hear certain stories too, that because it just some of the people that we're interviewing, they've just gone through unimaginable um, experiences. We built in Guatemala, we built a range of mobility park for amputees, and just hearing some of the stories of how they lost their leg and how you cope with it afterwards and the after effects of it. And just on a very human level, you can't help but be impacted by it, and they're still the level of, I think it's more impactful to see the level of resiliency and positivity and faith that comes out on the other side from something so excruciatingly difficult. And you can't prepare yourself for the kinds of stories that you're going to hear. And so I guess the biggest preparation that I have, to answer your question, that I make, is that I just allow myself to be in a state where I'm super present every day. I'm devotional about the work that we're there to do, and what that means is, sometimes we're going to places where there's a 12-hour time difference, and it's exhausting. You're jet lagged, and sometimes that doesn't help with being really present or taking in information. So it's having routines in my everyday that allow me to handle with the situations I know I'm going to be faced with, in order for me to be fully present. So I know if I'm fully present, I know that I can be in a state of vulnerability with the people that I am having a conversation with. And if I am in that vulnerable state, they are free and open to be themselves and share of themselves. And I am free and open in the same way, right? We kind of give each other permission to be human together. Um, and then yeah, and when it comes to really tangible elements, like we didn't get the build materials that we needed and now we have to improvise on the spot, it's a routine of it's literally a mental exercise of trusting in your own capacity to figure things out. I think schools around the world should be teaching kids how to think, not what to think. And when you teach someone how to think, you are teaching them to trust in their own capacity to figure anything out. You're teaching them to trust in themselves, that their feelings, their opinions matter in the moment, but they only matter in regards to what they do. Like if someone having an opinion online about a post or something, that's just conceptual. It's not, a tangible life experience. But if you have an opinion about something and you actually set out and go do something about it and you're taking action, faith without works is dead. So I think that as long as you're in that state of like working towards something, you're learning along the way, and then that opinion gets refined, or that opinion gets expressed and moves and makes a change and makes a difference in others. So it's the trusting in my own capacity to figure it out as I go, knowing I can't plan for everything, not allowing things like anxiety to kind of pervade the mind or the body, because anxiety can be stored in pockets in the body as well. And there's, just stretching every day. There's journaling, writing things down so that it doesn't take up mental space. That kind of preparation is really important because yeah, anxiety is such a waste of valuable energy resources that we have, because it's not real yet. Anxiety is built upon a future based mindset, and the future is not real. It's always the present, right? So trusting in community. You can't do anything by yourself. Like you can be independent, do you can have a vision for things, and all of that work is important to do on your own. But to really make a difference and build something tangible in the world, it takes an army. Like, it takes the people that encouraged you, inspired you. It takes the people that your tribe. We mentioned finding a tribe earlier within the creativity conference, and yeah, it takes a village to then create something, and everybody's different gifts coming together in this beautiful way. And so then just the final, I think, element of preparation for me mentally to go into something like this is, hey, I'm not doing this alone, and it's not about me. That's huge, right? And it's never about any one of us. It's about all of us.
You mentioned story. You've encountered so many stories and so many voices with all the traveling that you do to all of these locations. Are there any, potentially surprising universal storytelling similarities that you've noticed despite language or cultural barriers?
Okay, that's a really good. Oh, I know that I've had this conversation and I'm trying to pick one answer. um, yes, I think regardless of the language, there is a need in the human spirit to connect to another person, right? And to want to be understood. And so language is only like 20% of a conversation, really. 80% is nonverbal. And so when you remember that and know that it's a lot of the countries that we go to, I try to learn a lot of stuff in advance in terms of the linguistic element of it, in terms of learning some words that immediately build rapport. But of course, in the flow of, okay, I need a ladder over here. Like, how do you, how do you say that? Because I didn't learn that. Like, whatever it is, you start miming to each other, and then it leads to a lot of humor. Because then when there's misunderstandings in the miming, everyone is miming to each other. So everyone is being misunderstood, but then also understanding. So when you reach understanding, everybody laughs, and laughter breaks down any walls. Laughter breaks down any nervousness, and it's a connective tissue that makes everybody kind of enjoy and play and have a good time. And so I think what I've found is universally, you always want to turn everything that you're doing into a sort of game, into a sense of play. Like, we're all doing this together, and we're all imperfect in some way, but we're also uh, rooting for each other. And so when you turn things into a game, there's an innocence to what comes out of every person, because everyone's just having a good time. And so the work is serious, and we're taking the work seriously, but we're not taking ourselves seriously. And everybody does better work and is more creative, and it flows in that creativity when they're having a good time. I actually found this to be true before even traveling with the fixers and having those language barriers and everything. When I taught theater, I was theater director at an all-girls high school in my early 20s, and I found that actors really need to be in a sense of play in order to be really present. When you're playing tag, for example, you're not thinking about, okay, you're not mathematically mapping everything out in terms of where people are going, and you're not, hopefully, in this like really.
You've not seen me play tag.
Yeah, clearly, clearly, Aidan. Other than you, most of the time, people are just ready for anything, and they're jumping out of the way, and they're like really going for things, and you're not thinking. You're in this instinctual space, right? And same with improv games. You're in this instinctual space where you say, yeah, I am. Someone says, okay, your environment is you're on the moon, and you're like, yep, I'm on the moon now. Okay, and then you just build upon ideas, right? And so to be in that state of play gives that flow a rhythm and an ability to keep building upon itself. Whereas if things are being taken a little bit too if there's any pressures that start to come on, it limits creativity, it limits the building. It's like if anyone starts to like, no, I'm right, you're wrong, or any kind of negative mindset, it just halts the experience of being able to build upon something. And so to create games, even within companies, like any job, any kind of work that seems like it wouldn't be creative, you just start thinking outside the box and you start joking around with your colleagues as you're doing it because of the work being so serious. Then it really makes not just the work bearable, but it brings it to life in a new way, and you start seeing new perspectives that maybe you wouldn't have seen before if you weren't in a state of play.
And I remember this is something that you talked about in your talk in June at the New York conference. And if anybody wants to dive more into what you said there, that's on YouTube. Check it out. But and there's also more recently in October, there was a few sessions that touched on this topic. Garrett Palm did a session called Be Stupid, which was all about getting into the sense of play and, there's no bad ideas and just throw out and see what sticks. So it is a very, very universal topic. Certainly when you were teaching this and since then in your life now, do you have any techniques for getting into this state of mind? Any methods that you can just instantly get people to start, jamming around with you?
I love that question too. Yes, but it also, the technique depends on the environment. Like I can have all of these games ready to go and planned out, but until I'm in the space and I see what the dynamic is, what the riffs are within the group setting, if there's pack mentality or not, or if it's very, if nobody knows each other, like it depends on what is then chosen for that specific group or for that specific scenario. I tend to find little things like purposefully getting, if I'm working with teenagers, right, and they're talking about music, and I bring up, a musician's name, and I purposefully get it wrong, but it's not clear to them that I'm being purposeful. Like they were talking about Drake's music, or something, and I'll be like, "Oh, Drake," and then they'll be like, "Whoa," and then they all just. And they turn to kids again. I mean, it comes to life, and so it's just things like, wait, who's this Drake person? And then and then you're joking with them, but you turn just little jokes here and there that are nudges at, you're not making fun of anybody or anything. It's just it calls out the maybe generational difference a little bit at that moment. And then there's games that you can do. I think improv games are amazing. There's one called Concentration that you kind of sit around in a circle and then you sing this little song, and then whoever gets the little slap has to come up with a topic, and then everyone has to do word association and come up with a topic till someone's out or something, and then like that's a literal game. But yeah, and then there's other things like so I'm really into magic. The reason I really love magic is that no matter who it is, an 80-year-old woman or man, or a 5-year-old, everybody acts, it turns into a kid when they see an illusion or something that they can't explain being done, right? And magic, it turns, magicians are comedians, performers, singers all in one. I mean, they're and highly technical illusionists at the same time. It's really, really amazing because they're performing something, they're being funny, they're being relaxed, they're connecting with an audience, and then they're doing something that's inexplicable to most, right? They know how it's done, they know what they're doing, but they're using the magic or they're using that illusion in that specific time and place to tell a story or to convey a specific message. And so I actually have done some magic tricks for my kids. I read a lot, so I have some with books where it's like a mentalism thing, and I read their mind, and they just and then the freak out moment, and then they think you're really cool, and then I have to tell them I'm really not that cool. It's a trick, but but in that moment of amazement, you break. It's so good for the brain. Like it just breaks patterns of thinking, and it's good for the brain because it allows you to see that your perspective is slightly flawed, and so you're considering broader possibilities, and that's the impact that magic can have in a specific moment. You have parties where you go and sometimes they'll hire a magician to come and do kind of close-up magic for people because it starts conversations and it's a connective tissue between and it livens up an atmosphere in a party. Why? Because people are suddenly in a state of play, they're in a state of wonderment, they're in a state of amazement. So magic's another little tactic too that you can have in order to bring people together and feel connected, and then also joke around with people because you're not going to tell them how the trick is done or you would ruin it for them. So
So when it came to your youth and growing up and your training, I mean, I think you said you started your acting career when you were 6 years old. So you've been at this for a while, and I'm surprised you didn't end up being a magician by the sounds of things.
Oh, I love magic. There were so many things I wanted to be, but that's why I wanted to be an actor because I wanted to be an archaeologist. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a pop star. There's just and there's just so much time in one lifetime, So I'm like, if I'm an actor, I can just do everything while I'm playing a role. I can be every one of those things and do the research of it and stuff, and but not have to choose.
Well, do you remember being that age when you first started getting into acting, and sort of what initially drew you towards these sort of right brain activities?
Yeah, I do remember that. Well, my parents tell me that I used to ask before I could even talk. I would ask for music by going like this as a kid. Like this was my in my car seat. I wanted to hear music, and I would just go like this. And so there was always something, um, just beautifully elusive and ethereal about music for me. And the if you think about a song, it's actually designed to ramp up the emotions. It's designed to go somewhere. It's already a journey in both lyrics and the music itself and how it's being amplified and built. There's so many elements to it. And I do think that I just had like gold medalist parents, like in terms of the parenting department, like because I was just exposed to a lot of music and colors and painting, and I used to love painting when I was a kid, and it's such a privilege really because we all grow up and we think, oh, this is normal, until we realize like, oh no, like I had it really good with having parents that wanted to make sure that I was developing in a intentional way, really hands-on parents. So yeah, so I have to give it up for like my mom and my dad, who were both such a great team in that. And my mom, I mean, she's the kind of person that just does everything for everyone. She is consistently others based. She is just such an acts of service person. Um, she's so kind and she's so good, and so she was just such a good mom. And I think that the home space really makes a difference for creativity to flourish when you're a kid because you feel safe to explore possibilities. That creativity is all about exploring possibilities. And then I think on the inverse side, I had that experience. I've also had amazing artists that I know and friends that didn't have that experience, that either had absent parents or were very stifled in their creativity. They went on their own journey of self discovery and said, no, actually, this is who I'm going to be. And in fighting that battle of upbringing and being told they couldn't, and then telling themselves they could, they became the strongest in creativity that you possibly can. And they actually have less imposter syndrome, or they have less like things that can come up as an artist, like guilt, if you will, like, oh, I just spent all day creating and I didn't do anything like adult, or like they don't have that as much as maybe someone who grew up a little bit more free to do those things, because they had to fight for it. So I think both scenarios are possible to go in a beautiful, great direction. But yeah, just for me, I'd like to celebrate my parents for that one.
Yeah, is there any particular advice or lessons that you learned from them, or any other sort of mentors that you've had that has completely changed your creative trajectory?
My mom, she used to tell us bedtime stories growing up. And one day she just decided, oh, I'm going to enter some of these stories in this writing competition that was this like national competition that went out all over Mexico. And she entered the stories and won. And and so her book, her stories were turned into books that are now still used in schools, like in middle schools and elementary schools. And they're brilliant. I mean, reading her books, they're so good, and there's just something that she came up with as a bedtime story. And so it's one of those things where my mom didn't think she didn't aim to be a children's book author. She didn't take herself so seriously. She just was creating from the heart. Her intention was to put us to bed and entertain us at the same time, and kind of develop our minds that way. And then she went on to share that, and a lot of people resonated with it. And I think that lesson of when you just create out of the heart and you just take a leap of faith, and you're not kind of attached to an outcome. It was beautiful to see that you can endeavor in certain paths and not have an agenda or an end goal in mind, and then be surprised by it. I also wanted to say my dad, my dad, we grew up hearing so many phrases from him, phrases of wisdom, which he would coin. But my dad has this incredible ability to be extremely focused and driven, and one track minded about what his goal is, and then abstract reality, and be a poet at the same time. He'll write poetry, and he'll do things that are creative to see things from different angles, and from the philosophical standpoints of something, he'll be able to see so many different perspectives. So growing up talking to him about something, there was never one answer or never one thing that was being drilled into us that was like, okay, but have you seen it in this way as well? But have you seen it? Have you thought about this? And so we were never limited by our own thinking, because my dad, he wouldn't be devil's advocate because he wasn't trying to prove us wrong, but he would just make sure that our perspective was not tunnel vision. So I would say those are the two things my parents really, working together and bringing their two gifts together, instilled upon us.
From all the projects that you've worked on, are there any in particular that stand out in your mind looking back on them that you are particularly proud of? Do you have sort of a soft spot for, and you wish that more people knew about?
There's for example, there are live shows and theater shows that I've been a part of that um, weren't filmed, and therefore, are no longer around, and I don't have a reference point for them. So that, I could send it to a New York agent, or I could have someone that's come into my life recently be able to watch my work, or something that I'm fond of. But at the same time, I think those projects and that work had a moment in time, in real time, live with an audience that received it and appreciated it. And then it was that moment's time, and that moment is to go. um, I would say that currently, in terms of something that I think needs more love from me in terms of my own projects, is my writing, because I have outlined and I have written all these little memoirs and stories of travels from around the world. And I think I would answer that question in terms of not needing necessarily love from other people, but more love from, like, hey, I can just publish this book, and it doesn't matter if it moves one person and it gets off the shelf for just one individual, like that would have made a huge difference. And that would, and it's great because it's like, these are just the things that worked for me. These are stories I collected that really transformed my heart in some way. And if they can do the same for you, like that brings purpose into all of it, you know, because I don't think we were meant to experience things just for ourselves in this world. Like, we are social beings. We are made to be in community. And anything that we experience when we share it, that's what moves the world and keeps things going. That's the connective tissue of connection itself. So for me, anytime I learn something new, like, I'm bursting to share it with everybody, like, or with at least with everybody in my life. You know, I get really excited about something that, you know, I almost feel like when we make a new connection in the brain, right? It's like a new synapse that was just joined, a new little bridge that was formed in the brain, and our brains physically change with every new thing that we learn. And sometimes when we're taken by surprise, when we're shocked by information, I almost imagine, like, I can feel that change that just took place. Because, you know, I'm like, whoa, and you imagine like brain explosions, right? Like, those are the moments where that change. I'm like, okay, now I have to make sure everyone knows about this because it's gonna change their mind, or it's gonna change their world too. And then you share it, and they're like, yeah, Andrew, that's kind of obvious. And then you're like, no, I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, that's what I would say. Maybe a little bit more love into the projects that I've let go to the back burner.
And also, as you say, with live theatre, there's something, it's a shame that you can't go back and share that with people, but it also makes the people who you're actually there with, it makes it more special and more intimate. And knowing that it's, the ephemeral nature of it, like, after this exact thing is never going to happen again. So be here, be present. And that is such a powerful thing that there isn't really much else like that nowadays.
It's true. And actually, too, with live theater, you are feeling, being present in a theater, watching a performance or even performing it, you feel the energy of that person. Like, you feel the air is almost charged with possibility. And so there is something so grandiose and so esoteric and so inexplicable about the creative experience of both watching and performing theater, that is connected, that is present, that is like, everybody is here now. And yeah, when you film, there are theater performances that have been filmed, and it's amazing to watch the artistry and everything, but you can't possibly feel that air. You know, the only way I can describe it is the air, right? It's like the air being almost charged with electricity itself.
And dovetailing from that a little bit, so you've also done work in radio and student radio.
Mm-hmm.
How does that experience influence the way that you approach public speaking and acting and the work that you do today? And are there lessons that people can take away from what you've learned from doing that they don't necessarily have to have had their own radio show to learn and imply into their lives?
Having any kind of show where you get to design the layout and then have people on that you're interviewing and asking questions, and then having people phoning in requesting songs, or having people phoning in, I had phone calls from prisons sometimes thanking me for, you know, introducing them to certain songs or whatnot, because that's all they had to listen to that day. Like, they only had that station or something. Like, you know, those were the experiences that go, oh wow, like, any little thing that I choose to do has an impact or a ripple effect that I can't predict. But so the radio show was in Boston, and it was local radio stations, 88.9 FM, and it was quite known or popular in that area. And I had the privilege of running the Broadway and film music area. So I had 4 hours of a radio show that I had to fill every single week on my own. And I had total creative control. And it was the first time that I really developed something of my own that had a built in audience. And that was a little bit intimidating, because that built in audience was very loyal, and they loved the show. And coming in as a new host, and also as the person that chooses the music, that chooses the themes, that chooses what to say in between the songs. I mean, that can be quite intimidating, you know. And I think it was probably the first time though that I had to really step up to the plate and go, okay, well, I'm just going to shoot paint against the wall and see what sticks and see what comes out. Not randomly, like I was very intentional about what I wanted to say in between each song. I was very intentional about my research, about the shows that I was putting out, or the songs that I was putting out. And then in that journey, because it was very public, right? But it's my own work and it's my own words that are going out there. So any criticism was going to come directly at my heart. And I knew that. um, and yet it's the daring to take that step forward and to do it. I think that allowed me to really gain a lesson in, it's important to care about what you do, and it's important to care about what certain people think, certain people that you trust, that you believe in, that you look up to. And then everybody else's opinion can't live in your mind or in your world at all. Like, it doesn't have a place. You can learn from certain things that people say, but it's not let in. So I learned to put up, I guess, emotional boundaries, and boundaries even for myself, in terms of like, okay, I'm gonna take in reviews and all these things. And I mean, I got positive reviews. I had mostly really wonderful feedback from listeners and from the station itself. And actually, my show ended up grossing the most amount of income for the station for 3 years in a row. So I was pretty proud of that. But I didn't know that going in. I didn't know that would be the outcome. I didn't know if I was going to succeed or not. So I was really putting myself out there in a really public way. And I just kind of faced it, despite the fears and despite the anything and that was going on in my head, or the thoughts and whatnot. And then also I had live interviews coming in, and I was interviewing huge Broadway composers and huge Broadway stars. I mean, Dean Pitchford came into my little radio booth, and he wrote Fame and won the Oscar for music for that, and or was nominated. And who else? Andrew Lippa, who I was a huge fan of because he wrote the music for Big Fish, the Broadway musical, and a bunch of other musicals that I love. And so it was just getting to, at a still early on in my radio career, not really knowing if I was doing things the right way or not, interview these huge people. And they were so cool, and they were so good because they do interviews all the time, that I didn't really have to do anything other than connect with them on a human level and ask them questions. And then the Broadway casts that would come in and sing live on the show, and interviewing them, I think it just started to really develop my ability to communicate effectively in really high stakes situations that were high stakes for me. And I think when you face a fear and you survive it, we were talking about those synapses and those connections in the brain that happen. Suddenly the amygdala, which is the region of the brain that kind of flashes fear in your direction and say, no, don't do that. That's gonna, suddenly the amygdala gets taught that you survived that. So then suddenly it's not as scary anymore. And you can keep doing the things that scare you, that, don't do things that, potentially could actually kill you. But the amygdala doesn't know what can kill you or not. We're not that evolved yet. And so all the amygdala is there for is to keep us alive. And so when you're really, really afraid of something to the point that you're shaking, but all you're doing is speaking in front of a crowd of people, that's not going to kill you. It might really go well, or it might really not go well. But either way, you're going to survive the experience. And then there's going to be a sense of strength that comes from that because you did survive it. And so you just keep powering that and building that strength, and that's really exciting. So those are the things I would say came out of hosting a radio show with a built-in audience.
Yeah, being live with no safety net of editing is super scary. and speaking
Yeah.
in front of on a stage with a bunch of people, very scary for a lot of people. But as you say, you can use fear and discomfort to, be a guide to help rather than hinder your creativity and in the grand scheme of things.
Well, and you know better than anyone, Aidan, because you hosted some TEDx talks a couple of times, and you put together really big events before, and you've probably had to contend with a lot of things like that.
I organized a TEDx event. I did not speak. I did not give a talk. I introduced it on stage.
You introduced it.
There we go. That's it.
But you hosted the event. I mean, you had to put it together. You brought the speakers.
Yes.
At the end of the day, event going well or not, things did come back to you, right?
Yeah, and I have also done some live streamed TV work and speaking where there's no safety net of editing, and yeah, you just have to prepare well enough so that you can trust that it's not going to just go off the rails. Know the subject really well so that you have anecdotes and experience to draw upon if you need to.
Well, I have to say though, Aidan, like as someone who interviewed people on radio shows and then now TV docuseries and stuff, you are an excellent interview host person.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel very safe right now. I feel very taken care of. So
yes, well, I point any listeners towards Serena Catania's talk in October, which was "Let's Get Comfy: Interview Secrets," where she talked about
yes,
interview techniques.
That was good.
Obviously, I've been doing this longer than a month, so I've had all these skills down for ages. But she really gave out some nuggets of wisdom when it comes to interviews in that talk. So definitely check out.
Okay, we mentioned Serena earlier, yes. And I feel like we need to call out that this is not sponsored by Serena Catania.
She's just an awesome
real.
Human.
Like,
yeah.
She's just awesome. Okay, good. We just need to make
and
sure.
She's also one of the most accomplished and well experienced interviewers in the world. I mean, she's done thousands of them. She's she's great. I highly recommend her talk. Outside of your work, do you have any hobbies or pastimes other than practicing your magic, of course, that keep your mind fresh and stimulate you creatively?
Oh my gosh, yes, so much. Okay, so I've recently, and I recommend this to every single human out there. I love painting. I did painting before, but obviously there's this activity called paint by numbers, where you don't have to think about how creative your piece is going to be. You just follow the number prompts. And it's actually really hard. It takes forever if you get the little intricate ones and they have all these different colors. And I've been doing this thing where I put on headphones and I listen to an audiobook that I've been meaning to get to that is either philosophical in nature or either, just is nonfiction, I should basically, or, you can listen to whatever you want. But I find that anything you really want to absorb the information of, if you're doing something kinesthetic and tangibly moving your body and your mind in a specific direction, you absorb the information more. And so I've been doing this paint by numbers where I'm seeing colors and I'm painting. I'm not having to think about anything other than what I'm listening to in the audiobook, but I'm doing something. Or you can also take mandala drawings and color pencil them in and just do something that is movement oriented while you're listening to that, and you absorb the information so much more. And it really shocked me because I was doing that. Then I went to do a talk with some of the kids that I work. I also work at a nonprofit where I work with teenagers from different various backgrounds. I was giving a talk about something. I was doing a visualization exercise with them, and then I regurgitated some information that I had just listened to the night before, and a book having to do with how the brain works. And and I just couldn't remember. I couldn't believe that I had retained all of that because I hadn't written it down or I hadn't done it. So anyway, that activity is super cool. I really, really vouch for that because it's so meditative and so calming that if you're in a state of freak out or stress, it is the best thing that I can possibly recommend doing. That it feels productive because you are taking in information that is relevant and important, but it's also softening of the senses, and that's a really cool thing. I also love playing piano. I don't actually read music, but I'm learning by ear some songs on different systems and things. So yeah, just doing that to relax. It's really frustrating and hard at first, and then and then it becomes relaxing. So yeah, so doing that is really great. Playing guitar, yeah, random thing. I love carpentry, obviously, because I do build projects, but kind of doing. I just built my own bed frame in my garage because my old one was getting bad, so I put it out. But then I didn't have room under my mattress, so and I was like, I need as much room as possible, so I just built a bed frame in my garage. With spare wood that I had, and I was not sure that I could do it. So we're gonna pray that it keeps working. But not just kidding. It's there. But yeah. So those are kind of little hobbies that outside of work keep me sane.
Yeah, and the movement thing is huge, and also I think there's some science somewhere that says that the color green also helps you retain information more and helps
Yeah,
stimulate the senses. So
being
going
in
for a
nature.
walk in nature,
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by trees, whilst or immediately
Mm,
after you've learned some information, can really help with the retaining of that,
absolutely.
which is why the urban jungles that so many of us live in nowadays are so stifling creatively, because we don't move around that much, we don't see the color green that much.
Yeah, and it's such a subtle thing that we tend to gravitate towards things that are happening actively in our lives, or to pinpointing things like, oh well, I must just have, name the thing, like depression, anxiety, whatever it is, and rather actually that sometimes there's a very simple explanation or solution where it's really you're just detached from your nature. And going back to that is, I mean, human nature and nature are connected.
A lot of creatives struggle with imposter syndrome, and a lot of the speakers that we've had at the creativity conference have touched on their experience with this. Do you have any advice beyond connecting with nature, for creatives out there who are struggling with feelings of inadequacy, when their lives otherwise from the outside appear to be going well?
Two things. The first is who is in your immediate circle. You are the five closest people to you. That's a common expression, right? But it is so true. I can't express how important to the psyche community is. Being surrounded by people who believe in you, who see, not just believe in you and your ultimate success and end results, because that can lead to having people that are really just investing in being around you because they think that you have this or that to offer them later on, right? But I mean, like, really see the treasure in you already that exists in this moment without anything having to happen. That is so important, because there's there's this quote says, be yourself, because then the people looking for you can find you. And I just really love that, because there are people out there looking for like-minded souls. And I don't mean this romantically, right? I mean like literally, like people who need to feel seen, and it takes one to know one. And so when you have some treasure within you and you meet someone with that same treasure within them, it's just an explosion of feeling seen and then feeling alive and excited for no good reason. Like, and I just call that spirit. You're just brought together by something greater. So just finding your tribe, and putting yourself in situations and environments where you would find that is uh, imperative. I sometimes go to events not feeling particularly social, and I'm not there to meet everybody there, but I always know if I decided to go, it was because I meant to meet at least one person there, and it always proves to be true. Either it's a connection from the past that resurfaced, and whoa, where have you been, and that kind of thing, or there's just one person that I felt like this was so life giving, and we were life giving to each other, in a sense. And then you go, okay, that just helped me realize I have a community and a village behind me and in front of me, and I am part of someone's village to then build upon and create. And that, I think, gets rid of the imposter syndrome a little bit, because it's a reminder that it's not about you. And it's when it's not about you, the imposter syndrome kind of goes away. Like when you're just doing things because they're the right thing to do, or because you learn something and you just want it to impact other people's lives as much as it impacted you, it has a special power to it. And then you don't have to feel like an imposter, even though, people might be really grateful, or they might approach you in this kind of like, oh my gosh, you are amazing for X, Y, and Z. There's always a response of like, oh, well, the fact that you even feel that way means that that exists in you. So we're amazing together. How great is that? So I think just keeping that in mind, um, taking the work seriously, but not yourself so seriously, that is what gets rid of imposter syndrome.
Every word of that is gold. And I particularly emphasize there's always one person at any networking event or social event. There's always one person who you don't know that you need to know. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just about finding that person. And it may take some time of going, introducing yourself to tons of people and going, okay, yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah, not really feeling much of a connection here. But then there's always one person who you go, there's no way, like, you're doing something that is so intrinsically linked to what I'm doing, and that's amazing, and you learn so much, and it can lead to some great connections down the line. I've already had just countless times where that has proven itself to be true. So I just emphasize that to the utmost extent. There's a lot of other things that we didn't have time to get to, but we can talk about another time. I always end these podcasts with one final question, which is a fairly abstract one, but I feel like you'll have a good answer to it. And it's just, how do you define creativity? What does creativity mean to you?
Oh man, I had a really good written down definition. I don't have it memorized, which is great because this will just be from the heart. But um, creativity to me is the essence of life. I think the creation, we are the creation, and we are creative by nature. And it's this infinity symbol in my brain of one begets another. So if something was created, then it has a purpose, and having a purpose, it has meaning, and having meaning, it is creating along the way by existing. And so in our very existence, we have a calling to be creative. There is a devotional element to human nature and to existing that when we are not in connection and in alignment with that essence of creativity, we start to feel a void, or we start to feel like we're searching for something. And it can be so crippling to be disconnected from that. And so I do very much believe that it is something spiritual and esoteric as much as it is just scientifically a practically important thing for your brain to constantly be in a state of, here's a reality. Now I'm going to abstract reality. I'm going to come up with another way of looking at it, and then I'm going to land it in the present moment, and I'm going to execute it. And that is why there's no such thing as one way of doing something, or one trajectory, or one definition to success, or anything, because people are constantly surprising each other with our gifts and our potential. And when we bring our gifts together, which our gifts are inherently different because we're all so unique in our experiences of the world, that when brought together, that elevates the creative element, or what is created out of it. So creativity itself is an art of collaboration. It's an art of existing.
Well, for something that you didn't have written down in front of you, that was pretty bang on.
Oh, sweet. Good. Yeah, it changes every day, but that's what it was today.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your nuggets of wisdom with me and everybody who's listened to this in the future. I very much appreciate you joining us, and I look forward to you joining us again at future creativity conferences in New York, or online, or in Iceland, wherever they may end up being.
Aw, thank you, Aidan. This was such a pleasure. You're so great at keeping a conversation going. You're really, really probably one of the best interviewers. I can talk. Interviewers I've ever had. So thank you for that. I'll take notes too for myself.